What I wanted to quickly do this video, and it's weighing in on the Viking debates and what Vikings were and Vikings weren't. And I've seen a lot of videos. There's some really cool videos out there debunking a lot of myths. I just wanted to add in a few of my own thoughts. You know, when people say I'm not a historian, well, all too often we get mixed up with qualifications in history and stuff like that. And what we've got to remember is the first rule to any history is that history is written by many peoples. The strongest of civilizations will write history in their own image, and they will write it to how they feel. And indeed, we can even see now in today's society that tries to rewrite historical facts with complete and utter fiction, and it's absolutely crazy. And I have no doubt that this was done throughout the ages. The Romans were notorious for writing up certain victories as a glorious victory for the Roman Empire, but in reality it was a long bloody battle. There's many examples, but I'm gonna skip over that and just talk about Vikings. I personally am a historian of that time. I have written a few fantasy books, and I've used some inspiration from the Vikings and perhaps glamorized them, and as we fantasy writers are wont to do, we never let, as one person said, never let factual history stand in the way of a good story. And as fantasy writers, we tend to do that. Look, first and foremost, fantasy writers are there to tell a story. We're not interested in historical accuracy unless we are writing a specific account or a specific story based on actual events. And even then, we might dramatize a few things for artistic purpose, but then there are some that are way out there and completely ignore all things. You know, you could almost say it's an alternate reality. But first and foremost, like it's been stated, Vikings, not all Scandinavians were Vikings. In fact, some peoples have been included in, some Scandinavians have been included in the Viking, shall we say, circle, when really they're not. Those Vikings were those who went on trading, raids, travelled. It was pretty much a nomadic term, actually. The peoples of the world, in fact, even knew the distinction between the raiders, the traders, the adventurers, and in fact some Vikings even, in some cases, hired themselves out to defend against other Vikings. There were Viking traders who were like, you know what, I've had enough of this, we're trying to trade and these guys are coming along and attacking other villages, we want to sort this out. And they would actually defend it. They would defend and say, hey, you know, we're trading here, we don't need you coming along and killing our trade. Along with that, the adventurers, the Vikings, they wore armour, but let's remember first and foremost, a Viking or a warrior, and sometimes they can be both, let's make that distinction. Some Vikings were not warriors, they were normal people who went out to do whatever, perhaps to seek adventure, to become a warrior. But Vikings and warriors, one of the main concerns was dying in battle and being valorous in battle and going to Valhalla to sit with Odin, to fight with him for a hero's welcome. So to a certain extent, they were not afraid of dying. So they would use armour because obviously they wanted to do whatever it is they wanted to do. They wanted to achieve that, and they saw that armour could protect them with doing that. The notion of ringmail or chainmail and other sort of armours and stuff like that were very rare. In fact, chainmail, as it was said on another video, was not a common thing. It wasn't. There's been a lot of misinterpretation. However, saying that, what these videos neglect to mention is there are tales of some Viking adventurers, Viking warriors, Viking raiders who would go out, for example, find some armour because they liked the look of it or because it gave them a certain style, and each had their own style. They didn't have a uniformity like you see in some films. They literally wore what they had, and they would say, I like that idea, I will use that as part of my own ensemble. They would not travel in their armour, but before they went on a raid or an adventure, they would travel without their armour on, and they would change into their armour ready for battle. There's a couple of examples where historically Vikings, there were some Vikings who would utilise some Roman armour, the gladius helmet, for example. There were some Vikings who were like, you know, well, that's a really good idea, it'll protect us, I'll be able to look, and quite frankly, I'll look good in it. It was a status emblem. They admired the warriors. In fact, they were cognizant of the gladiators in the Roman Colosseums, and actually they had a certain admiration for that. In fact, there were some who were even from those who managed to escape. There were some who had Roman slaves as well, who would catch Roman slaves and bring them back to serve, and they would listen to the stories of the Colosseums and everything, and with interest. So the Vikings really were, a mismatched people with no fear of death in battle, absolutely none whatsoever. In fact, if they died in battle, so much the better. So really, when it comes to armour, they really did actually have their own preferences. That it was not dictated. So some would have obviously better armour than others. It depends on the wealth, it depends on the status, it depended on everything else. Everything depended on status, on who you were. In fact, some things were not allowed to be worn if you didn't have a certain status or hadn't earned that certain status. They were very, very focused on what you'd earned by your hand. So I just wanted to weigh in on that, is that there is sort of a generic clothing, the loose pants or the tight pants, no pockets, tunic, the basic wear of the peasantry. Especially when it got cold, there would be some furs worn, but other than that, it was pretty much down to personal preference on what they would wear. So that's my those are my thoughts on Vikings and on raiders and everything else as well. Pretty much looking through a few textual books and personal accounts of different people encountering Vikings. There are several from, many of you may be aware of the Eaters of the Dead, or the 13th Warrior, which is actually based on Hassan ibn Falal ibn Rashid ibn Muhammad, who was successfully envoyed to a group of Vikings and to make contact and talk with them. There obviously was a dramatised thing, but there are several writings of the Vikings adopting different weaponry. Some from the Middle East, some from the Romans, some from England, all over, whatever they thought would work best. So there are plenty of, like I said, plenty of personal accounts of things. We can't just go through the histories. You've really got to look and read through personal accountings of different people who encountered it, and not just the standardised history books that are produced and churned over by the establishment. So those are my thoughts today. Just thought I'd share those with you. Have a great day.